r/ask Reddit. What is the strangest mystery that is still unsolved? The whereabouts of the last Gestapo chief Heinrich Müller. The last verified sighting of him was in Berlin roughly 3 days before it fell. He had stated he knew full well what the Russians did to prisoners and he had no intentions of being captured. As chief of the Gestapo, he more than likely had access to foreign documents as well as ways to replicate them. Both the CIA and the KGB spent time looking for him, but no trace has ever been found. He probably went to Argentina like the rest of the Nazis. I briefly dated a Brazilian girl that was very German looking. Turns out her dad's side was German and fled to Brazil. Her grandfather was part of the SS. Asher degree. Girl leaves her house in the middle of the night during a storm and disappeared. The only problem is that she was terrified of thunder and lightning and had no motive for leaving because her home life was fine. Then her clothes and backpack were found a year later in an abandoned construction site. Is this the girl wearing all white that they think is buried in a parking lot? No, she ran away during the early hours of the morning during a massive storm. She was spotted on the side of the highway but ran into the woods when anyone stopped. She had apparently packed a bag with some clothes and books which was found buried miles away from her home. She seems to have spent some time in an old shed, evidenced by candy wrappers. Fascinating case and one that keeps me up at night. Why would drive a little girl to take off from a loving home into the night and the wind and rain in February? Was she meeting someone? Was she groomed? Unfortunately, the case did not generate much popular interest at the time. That one time when the PM of Australia went to the beach. It even coined the term "do the Harold Holt" when you leave suddenly or without letting anyone know. That guy who ran away from the airport hopped the fence and was never seen again. Lars Mittank. The guy's motive for shooting up all those people in Vegas. This one has bothered me for quite some time as well. The guy had no criminal record, no history of mental illness, no known religious or political affiliations, was financially well off, and no known relationship issues. Very strange indeed. I think there was some weird shit with his family though. No? His dad was an FBI wanted criminal who basically abandoned him, and one of his brothers got caught with child porn and had booby-trapped his house with explosives. I think it's safe to say he had relationship issues within his family. Some strange shit going on there. The Tamim Shud case, also known as the mystery of the Somerton Man, is an unsolved case of an unidentified man found dead at 6:30 am, the 1st of December 1948, on the Somerton Park beach, just south of Adelaide, South Australia. The case is named after the Persian phrase Tamim Shud, meaning ended or finished, which was printed on a scrap of paper found months later in the fob pocket of the man's trousers. The scrap had been torn from the final page of a copy of Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, authored by 12th century poet Omar Khayyam. Tamim was misspelt as Tamin in many early reports, and this error has often been repeated, leading to confusion about the name in the media. The Salish Sea Feet, or the Mad Axe Man of New Orleans. The Salish Sea Feet are the approximately 20 dismembered feet found in or around British Columbia or Washington, USA. The feet sometimes are found still inside of shoes. No one knows how they got there or where they came from. Over the course of the last 13 years, the authorities have ruled out foul play. The Mad Axe Man of New Orleans ran rampant in 1918 and 1919. He murdered 6 people, usually those of Italian descent, with axes or straight razors. In March of 1919, he sent a lengthy letter from hottest hell that was pretty nonsensical, but the most relevant paragraphs read, "Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time, on next Tuesday night, I am going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it out on that specific Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. There were no murders that night because every dance hall in NOLA was filled to capacity. Clearly just a jazz musician who was really down on his luck and was willing to do anything to get a gig." Malaysian Flight 370. They're pretty certain the senior co-pilot did it on purpose. The Atlantic ran a piece about how the plane had to disable the autopilot to make a sharp turn. So it was most certainly on purpose. A hijacking has been ruled out because the doors were bolted. The pilot and co-pilot would have had a lot of time to call for help, but they didn't. The identity of and what happened to D.B. Cooper. A man on a plane called himself D.B. Cooper and claimed to have a bomb in his suitcase. He took the flight crew hostage, and when he got the money he asked for, he had the flight crew start flying again. Eventually he jumped out of the plane with a couple of parachutes and the money. No one knows where he went or if he even survived. The 1987 Arkansas murders of Don Henry and Kevin Ives. And every single possible witness surrounding them, like Keith McCaskill, who claimed to be on the tracks that night. He talked to the special prosecutor about what he saw, then realized the prosecutor was dirty. After coming forth as a witness, he began saying goodbye to his loved ones and planned his own funeral arrangements. Shortly after, he was stabbed 113 times. The Circleville Letters. In 1976, residents of the small city south of Columbus, Ohio began receiving handwritten, sinister and graphic letters. Each letter included secret and dark details about their personal lives. One resident received a ton of letters, accusing her of various unsavory acts. The author warned the resident that he had been keeping an eye on her home, as well as her comings and goings. The resident was horrified and tried to keep the letters a secret until her husband began receiving them. The attacks on the family continued, with large posters appearing around town spreading rumors about their 12-year-old child. One day in 1977, the husband left the house after receiving a call from who he thought was writing the letters. A few minutes later, the husband was found dead at the end of the street, dead behind the wheel. The sheriff had ruled it a homicide when he realized that a single shot had been fired before the accident, but there was no evidence that the husband was shot at the site. The sheriff found the husband was twice the legal limit and ruled it a drunk driving accident. The letters began once again, this time accusing the sheriff of covering up the true nature of the death. The letters also accused the sheriff of mishandling an investigation into the county coroner, who had been accused of other grotesque acts. The harassment continued, this time with signs along the road, and in 1983, the original resident who had been accused of having an affair pulled over to remove a sign. During the effort to remove the sign, she discovered a box was attached and inside of it was a small pistol. The gun was part of a booby trap designed to fire when the sign was removed. Paul Fressow was arrested and given 25 years, but one small problem. The letter writing continued even after Fressow was put in jail. In a new batch of letters, the author had promised to dig up the grave of a deceased baby and mail the bones to the police in the case of another potential affair turned murder. Hundreds of residents continued to receive personal letters until 1994, when everything stopped. Flight 19 of the 5th of December, 1945. 5 bomber craft on a routine training run became lost while heading back and eventually disappeared entirely. Audio has them saying that they thought they had ended up over the Florida Keys, but wind could not have allowed that. Even more interesting is the fact the rescue craft dispatched to locate them also disappeared. A strange but not creepy mystery, the disappearance and reappearance of Lawrence Joseph Bader. He was a cookware salesman from Akron, Ohio, who went missing in 1957. He went fishing, a storm hit, and his boat was found the next day with some damage. He was in debt and in trouble with the IRS, and his wife was about to have their third child. 4 days later, John Fritz Johnson appeared in a bar in Omaha, Nebraska. Spoiler, it's Larry Bader. Fritz was known for his wild personality. He attracted local attention for sitting atop a flagpole for 30 days to raise money for polio. He became a radio announcer and a TV sports director. He drove around in a hearse with a bar and became a minor celebrity in Omaha. By no means was avoiding attention. In 1964, a cancerous tumor was found behind his left eye and it had to be removed. In 1965, Fritz was in Chicago for a tournament and an acquaintance from Akron recognized him, despite the eye patch, and confronted him, and then brought Bader's niece to take a look. She agreed it was her uncle and confronted him about it as well. Fritz denied it but found it humorous. Fritz's fingerprints were then matched to Larry Bader's military records and it was confirmed. Fritz Johnson always maintained he had no memory of his former life as Larry Bader. Psychiatrists examined him and believed he was telling the truth even though he had financial reasons to assume a new identity, and the concept of someone forgetting their past and entirely constructing a different one with false memories is hard to fathom. It is also considered a possibility that the eye tumor had something to do with it. He ultimately died in 1966 from the eye tumor and it was never determined conclusively whether he was lying or not. I am fascinated by this case especially because he had an entire change in personality, an entire life backstory as Fritz, and he made no effort to live a low profile to avoid discovery. I found this case while looking through the Wikipedia category of people who have faked their own deaths, though it's debatable if this guy should even be on there, all of which are great stories. We still have no definitive proof of who this Socrates guy is. On one hand, he's mentioned constantly by philosophers from his time, often used as an example character, and several works are attributed to his name. On the other hand, we have countless legal records and censuses that confirm the existence of Aristotle and Plato, but none that link back to Socrates. He's either a very prolific philosopher, or an in-joke that classical philosophers would reference when they didn't know who to attribute quotes to. The identity of Jack the Ripper. The suicide of Lavina Johnson, a black female US Army private who was found shot to death inside a burning tent with a broken nose, black eyes, broken teeth, raped and acid burns on her genitals in July 2005. US Army ruled her death a suicide. The Lady of the Dunes. No one knows who she is. It's a pretty crazy story. Stephen King's son Joe Hill made a theory that she was an extra in the movie Jaws since a woman in the background of the movie looks very similar to her and can be seen in the same clothes the Lady of the Dunes. It makes a lot of sense but doesn't really explain who killed her or anything. Who killed John Bennett Ramsey? The Miyazawa family. Just listened to the Cassophile podcast on this and it has my mind blown. Someone entered the family home around 11:30 p.m. Killed everyone, ate some ice cream, took a nap, pooped and didn't flush, changed clothes and left like 8 hours after the crime. 20 years on and we don't know who or why. The Lost A-bomb off the coast of America, which the US government said not to worry about in the 50s and tried to cover up, was dumped in the ocean in an aviation accident and it's still lost to this day. 100x more powerful than what was dropped in Japan. Perhaps not the absolute strangest, but in March of 2020, the Windows market share for the long discontinued Windows XP skyrocketed by about 10% in China. This spike in Windows XP use for just 1 month is for unknown reasons. Some people think the Chinese government could have been looking for security flaws in the operating system to take advantage of. After all, lots of sensitive government equipment still runs on Windows XP. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.